Hi, I'm Patrick Dunnican. At Gibbons, we believe that citizens need to be informed about the complex issues that affect their lives. That's why we're proud to support the programming produced by the CAUCUS Educational Corporation and their partners in public television.
Funding for this special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by the New Jersey Education Association, the law firm of Gibbons, P.C., New Jersey Resources, NJM, auto insurance, homeowners insurance, and more, with a focus on safety and financial stability. NJ Best, New Jersey's 529 college savings plan. Turn a dream into a degree. International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825. And by the Northeast Regional Council of Carpenters. Promotional support provided by NJ.com. Small news, big news, true Jersey. And by POLITICKERNJ.
This is One-on-One. I'm an equal American just like you are.
The jobs of tomorrow are not the jobs of yesterday.
Look at this. You got this?
Here it is, man. Look at that.
Life without dance is boring.
When you first heard that they were doing Charlie Rose and Gayle King, didn't you go, what?
Do you enjoy talking politics?
No.
People call me because they feel nobody's paying attention.
Our culture, I don't think, has ever been tested the way it's being tested right now.
Such a good question. High five.
We're in Newark, New Jersey at the North Ward Center, speaking with the Senate President, Steve Sweeney. That's around Thanksgiving time. It's the holidays. Is the reason to be festive in and around the State House these days?
There's not a lot to cheer about right now, Steve. We got a lot of serious issues we have to deal with. You know, Transportation Trust Fund, we have pension issues and many, many others. Atlantic City's in free fall. You know, and just really trying to start to get the state back in a direction where we can put people back to work.
Yeah. By the way, we're at an event in which the Senate President was giving an award to his colleague on the Republican side of the aisle, Senator Kevin O'Toole, so that's why you see a lot of folks behind us. Let's take a couple of issues one at a time. The Transportation Trust Fund. What is the sticking point here, Senator? Why can't we move forward and find a stable source of funding for roads and bridges, which everyone acknowledges are crumbling?
Steve, we can. The sticking point right now is the Speaker and I are pretty close. In fact, I could say we're almost in agreement. You know, small details. We really do believe we need a $2 billion plan. So, one, we're in the right place. We need the governor to be in the same place in order to advance things, because you really can't do it without him. The other problem we have, Steve, is even if we do a $2 billion program, our Department of Transportation barely can put $500–600 million out on the street each year. And our roads are getting worse, not better.
So they're getting worse?
They're getting worse. And you're having more bridges closed because they're structurally deficient, and we're out of money. They just borrowed the last bit of money that was left in the TTF. So
Transportation Trust Fund.
Yes. So we're at a point now where we have to all get in a room, come to an agreement. It's going to cost money. It absolutely is going to cost money. And I do believe when you ask somebody, do you want your taxes raised? The answer is no.
The gas tax, 60% or so? No, they don't want it.
But you know something? People want commutes improved. Steve, polls are very simple. If you get a result by the way you ask a question. People do want their commutes improved. Anybody that travels the Turnpike knows what investment in transportation can be. Look, whatever we figure out, we'll constitutionally dedicate so at least the people know that every single penny will go for the purpose it's being raised, not to run this department or that department, because people they have a right to be skeptical. They really do. But we can't ignore our roads. Our economy's struggling from it, Steve. Businesses look long-term when they're looking to move to a place. Well, if you don't have an investment lined up, if you don't have a plan for 10 years, that's what businesses do. They're not coming. We're a location state. We need to be able to move people and product. So that's why we need a TTF so badly.
Last question on this. By the way, we're with Senate President Steve Sweeney in Newark, New Jersey. A big crowd behind us. The senator just gave an award to his Republican colleague, Kevin O'Toole. Quick question on this. The governor out on the presidential campaign trail as we speak right now, don't know how things are going to play out. Right now he says absolutely not. He's not going to agree to any new tax. I believe, or do you believe that includes the gas tax? Has he told you that?
Listen. When he says something, I believe it, but he's also said he's open to fixing the TTF. And like I said, Steve, no roads are free. When you drive on a municipal road, you go over a municipal bridge, that they're paid with property taxes. That's not even a gas tax. That's paid through bonds that are funded through property taxes. So I believe the governor when he says he's serious about this, but we're also serious. And my Republican friends like John Bramnick say, well, we have to do tax relief. We agree. We want to raise the threshold for retirement income to $100,000. We agree on the estate tax that we need to start to peel it all the way back, but they don't have to be mutually tied. We're going to advance those issues ourselves. We, the Democrats, passed a bill to raise retirement income threshold. Right now, we tax retirement income at $20,000 if you're married. We raised it to $100,000. The governor vetoed it. So when we talk about property tax relief, we're on board with it. We cut business taxes $540 million. We're not afraid to do that. We have to do all these things. And if the Republicans need that for cover to say, if we do this, we're not tying them because they don't need to be tied. But we're going to do tax relief as well as doing these other issues.
Quick question on the pension situation. What are the odds that we're going to be able to resolve the pension crisis in the state right now? How much are we in debt right now?
About $80 billion.
Give or take a few?
Listen, we were on a path to fix it when we did the legislation in 2011. The governor, things got tough. The governor chose not to fund it. We were trying to fund it through a millionaire's tax. He was against that.
You wouldn't fund that. Respectfully, Senator, the millionaire's tax would have brought in how much?
That's $660 million. But what that would have done, Steve, is would have helped us keep up. When we did this benefit reform,
2011.
2011. We did, which was noticed in Wall Street and other places, where you call smoothing, where you when you don't have all the money to make the payment at first, you spread it out over a 7-year period to get to your full payment. What happened to us is we didn't realize the ratable growth that we calculated in to make it happen. We needed 3% ratable growth. We didn't think that was unattainable. That's really the average of what was going on in the country, and it didn't happen. So we came up short, and that's why we were looking at other forms to try to plug the shortage. And look, I didn't want to, we said, look, put the millionaire's tax in place until revenues increase and we'll sunset it.
But the governor refused to do it.
He refused to do it. But listen, the workers are paying more, Steve. Bottom line is, people can argue all they, say that the workers are the problem. The workers are paying up to 35% for their health care now because we legislated it. They're paying more for their pensions because we legislated it. And the one piece that we thought we really had was a requirement, because the courts said, if you want to guarantee the payment, you have to write it this way. So we wrote the language exactly the way the courts told us to. And it was in a decision with the teachers back in '06. So we really felt that we were in solid ground, that even if the governor chose not to make the payment, he would be forced to by court. And you saw the courts.
The court said you don't have to.
Yeah, but you know something? 800,000 people, Steve. That's 10% of the people of this state. We have 8 million plus people are actually in a position that they could see their pensions really be significantly reduced. That will be an enormous impact to the economy of this state if we let that happen.
Final question on the pension situation. If it's not resolved for public employees, what do you believe it means for every citizen of this state, be they a public employee or not?
Well, I gotta clear it up a little bit. Municipal, county, police, and fire pensions are fine. They're funded in the 70%.
State employees.
It's state employees and teachers that are really the ones that are at the greatest risk right now. What it means, Steve, is that people that are retired, if we don't have enough money going into the pension, their checks will have to be reduced. After they've been given a promise. If I've taught for 35 years and I was told at the end of the rainbow, this is what I was going to get, and I plan my retirement around that, Steve, we have an obligation to keep that. Talking about, people say, well, what about new reforms and new changes? The teachers were willing to sit with the governor and sat with the governor trying to find new solutions. But you have to honor the old obligation.
Last question. Last topic. Victims of Hurricane Sandy as we go into 2016. are suffering, businesses, individuals. What needs to be done for them, and why has government on the state level failed to do what those people are asking for?
Steve, it was mismanaged. It was mishandled. The governor did a phenomenal job getting the funds. You know that, we all praised him for it.
From the federal government?
From the feds. He went down and challenged his own party and got
Republicans in Congress who are not particularly willing.
Exactly. So we all gave him credit for that. But it was the implementation, Steve. It was the refusal to work with local groups, local nonprofits that knew the communities. You were calling an 800 number down in Louisiana someplace, who had a horrible track record. The state hires this company, and they're telling people to go into the wrong plans. They're giving people bad information. So at the end of the day, there was just mass confusion around, how do I implement this? How do I get into it? What we should have done is worked within the counties with the nonprofits, where people could physically go and sit with someone and say, this is what I have. And somebody could really basically counsel and work through them to make sure their paperwork was in order and they were placed in the right program. You know how many programs there were?
It's confusing.
Oh, it's unbelievably confusing. And to ask homeowners that are dealing with a crisis with their homes the way they were to, well, you're being told, go into this plan. And you find out it's the wrong plan. Now I've been delayed 6 months. Steve, it was mismanaged. We've reorganized. The administration is doing better now. It's just, it's been way too long. And it's, 3 years, right? It's going to come up on 3 years pretty soon, I think.
Yeah, it's just passed.
Yeah, it just passed 3 years. And people still aren't in their homes. And I always look at things that, if that was my house, I would expect my government to give me proper information and help me back, not be the problem that I'm not back.
Thank you, Senator. We appreciate your time and wish you nothing but the best, particularly your colleagues in the Senate, as well as your family in 2016.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks, pal. Thank you.
To see more one-on-one with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato PhD, and follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
We're here with Senator Tom Kean Jr., the Senate Republican leader. Senator, let me ask you, here at the New Jersey Business and Industry Association annual conference dealing with public policy issues, number one business issue facing the state is?
Affordability. Taxes are simply too high, and people really feel that they can't afford to grow their businesses here, and so too many people are being forced to leave the state. And they're not moving to Florida. Second most number of people are moving to Pennsylvania. And they're not moving to Pennsylvania because of the weather. They're moving because the tax environment is very fundamentally different than it is here. And so we are competing not only against the region, but across the globe to make sure more people can afford to live here. And the most important thing that we can do as policymakers, but as family people in New Jersey, is making sure that people want to be in New Jersey 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. Because if you don't have that hope and that promise to try to stay in the state of New Jersey, all of a sudden you get 3 generations of families living in different parts of the country. And that's not good either for those families, and it's certainly not good for the state of New Jersey.
Senator, let's talk about specific taxes that you believe need to be changed. Let's talk about the 2 death taxes. Break them down one at a time and make it clear to people why they matter.
The first area is the estate tax or the death tax. That's with the tax that somebody pays when they pass and before it goes on to anybody else. And what happens is in New Jersey, 10 years ago, it was decoupled from the federal tax rate. The federal tax rate is now $5.4 million indexed every year. New Jersey's stuck at $675,000. And so
what does that mean? After $675,000, what happens?
After $675,000, that estate is taxed all the way back to dollar number 1. And so what individuals do is they say, well, I don't want to pay that tax upon my death. And so they say, I'm going to move to Pennsylvania. That doesn't tax either pension income or deferred income, for example. They move to Florida. They move to Texas. And what happens is when those individuals move, not only do you lose that family member, but you also say if that individual goes into another state, they need to prove that they live in that other state. So not only do they give to charities, tens of millions of dollars in many instances, but they also build things like hospital wings. And so you start to lose people on valuable research, on valuable job creation. And so what happens is other states are growing at the expense of New Jersey. So what you want to make sure is that the state tax is, we get rid of the estate tax, because we're one of the few states that have, if not the only state, that has both the estate tax and the inheritance tax. But you also have to have the other taxes, which is the pension deductibility. So Pennsylvania, as I said earlier, doesn't tax deferred income. So what happens if you make, so right now we tax people starting at about $20,000. If you make that exemption $20,000 to $40,000 or $50,000 or $60,000 or even higher, that means those individuals stay in the state of New Jersey and can afford to stay in the state of New Jersey, number one. The other thing you need to focus on is charitable deductions. Right now, the federal government, you get a tax deduction for giving to charity.
What about the state?
In the state, there is no such deduction. And what happens is, just like individuals leave the state of New Jersey and their income goes some other places, their families go some other places, their businesses go someplace else, the charities get hurt because those individuals don't give in this state. And so what happens is, for example, when you look at a couple years ago, it was measured, $70 billion of wealth left the state of New Jersey over a couple of year period. That meant that $2 billion of income taxes left with that $70 billion worth of wealth, but also $1.3 billion of charitable giving left the state of New Jersey. Now, if you annualize that over the course of the last 15 or 20 years, that's a real impact on churches and synagogues and other religious organizations. That's an impact on arts groups and education groups. That's an impact on healthcare. And so what those individuals that are closest to being able to help those in need, those local charities, American Red Cross, for example, they get hurt. And so you need to also phase out the charitable or the deduction, because you need to put that in, because all that together means more people stay in the state of New Jersey. And if more people stay in the state of New Jersey, number one, the family bonds are stronger. Number two, businesses are growing in the state of New Jersey, which means you get more income tax revenue, which means you get more sales tax revenues, which means you get more of all those other tax revenues coming into the state of New Jersey, and you get a stronger staying in New Jersey. Because what happens now, and if I may, and I know where you're going, but right now,
you do know where I'm going?
Even the
I'm going where the lost revenue is. Yeah, that Vincent Prieto, the Assembly Speaker, told me right here in this spot, you know, at this forum of the Business and Industry Association, said the concern he has and others have is that if in fact we change those policies, particularly on the death tax, the estate tax, that we lose the revenue that those people would have paid when they die. And how are we going to replace that? Because we need more revenue.
What everybody in that room disagrees with that point of view. Everybody in that room is talking about the fact that the individual will move out of the state of New Jersey. Those individuals are the most mobile. And what happens is they take the jobs with them. So what happens is if you keep an individual in the state of New Jersey for 5 years or 6 years longer, that income tax revenue, that sales tax revenue, that home transfer revenue, all those things are helpful, number one. Number two, for the last 15 years, we have not had a net positive income tax from year to year in the income taxable income for the year for the last 15 years. What that means is more people are leaving the state of New Jersey, more wealth is leaving the state of New Jersey year over year. And what that means is that those taxes are not being paid here. If you're not, you can't tax an individual when they're in Florida. So you want to make sure that those individuals, but that's only a small portion of the number.
Let me bring up another tax.
The overall number is to make sure that people can afford to stay in the state of New Jersey, that they want to stay here, as I stated earlier, for the next 5 or 10 or 20 years. Because if those individuals, meaning the people who are pensioners, so those individuals who have worked in the school system their entire life, they move to Pennsylvania, for example, or they move to Florida, or they move to Texas. The individuals who have worked in the private sector and have deferred income, they move to Pennsylvania. They move to Florida. They move to Texas. We lose that revenue. But also,
Senator, I want to bring up the gas tax.
The parents and the grandparents.
Senator, I want managing time as well. Gas tax.
Right.
No one wants to pay that either. No one wants to increase the gas tax. However, Democrats and even some Republicans are saying, look, while we may not want to raise the gas tax, that may be the only way we can put more dollars in the Transportation Trust Fund
that in the mid-'80s, with your dad as the governor and some of us who happened to be in the legislature at the time who voted for that, the stable source of funding that take care of our roads and bridges, which by all accounts you've agreed are crumbling, are in disrepair. Would you be open to the idea of, you know what, don't want to raise the gas tax, but we need to do that to get those dollars into this fund to take care of our roads and bridges? Would you be open to that?
Well, the first question is to make sure that those dollars that do come in already are being efficiently spent. And right now, the first thing that people need to understand is listen, we are a different state than many other places. Our environment is we go across the heat spectrum and the cold spectrum a lot more frequently than a lot of other states and a lot of other parts of the country. So it can be more expensive to build here. We are more densely populated. It can be more expensive to build here. So what we need to first and foremost make sure of is, like New York, like Massachusetts, like other states, that our dollars are spent efficiently. That's the first promise.
The fund is running out of dollars by the end of June 2016.
It is. And so, but the question is how you raise revenues, if you need to raise those revenues. That's the last question. The first question is efficiency of spending, making sure the project list is right, making sure that it's affordable for people in the state of New Jersey. Then and only then, if you looked and say there's a difference between what we need and what we can afford, then you look at the revenue streams about how you get to that end point. But you don't start with a gas tax and say we're going to fit everything into that box. You say we need to make sure that our infrastructure, because we are a state that requires a lot of infrastructure, a lot of improvements on infrastructure. We've seen that throughout our history. Their infrastructure improvements are important.
Senator, respectfully, one second. You say we start with the gas tax. Has it not been at least 5 or 6 years that it's been talked about? Is it starting with the gas tax? Is that how you see it? People are starting with wanting to raise the gas tax?
I think people have talked about the gas tax for many years. It seems to be the only tax that the Democratic majority hasn't raised for the last several decades that they've been in charge, as you well know. But it seems to be that we've first and foremost got to make sure that we are spending our money efficiently as humanly possible. That's the first index. Number two, focus on the project and figure out how you get that done. Number three, and only then, if there is a difference, you say, okay, how are we going to raise the revenues? But then you also have to realize that you don't want those revenues used for other purposes. So, for example, what's happened over the course of the last several years is even though money was supposed to be dedicated, they used it for operational expenses. They were using transportation trust fund dollars to wash buses. You're not supposed to use it for that. If you're going to use 30-year dollars, it should be for infrastructure that's going to last.
Give me 30 seconds on the pension situation. Senate President Steve Sweeney, when we spoke to him, it was before he proposed the constitutional change. Do you have a solution to the pension crisis? 30 seconds or less.
We need to come together. The independent body that had Republicans and Democrats on together had a very good roadmap, I thought, that should use as the basis on a bipartisan basis to come together and make sure our pensions and our health care is affordable.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
To see more one-on-one with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato PhD and follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
It's always great to speak to the President of the Senate, Steve Sweeney, and the Minority Leader in the Senate, Tom Kean. Important issues, but Ralph, let's face it, if New Jersey doesn't deal with its serious problem with roads and bridges, which
what
are...
happens?
I mean, look, we're talking about public safety and the Transportation Trust Fund. I mean, people say they don't know what it is, and most people shouldn't know what it is because it's, a technical sounding word. It is the fund that goes out of business. There is no more money. Last day of June 2016, that fund is the fund that pays for the roads and bridges, the fixing of them, the repairing of them in the state of New Jersey. Now, how bad are we talking?
Yeah.
We're talking about the fact that the American Society of Civil Engineers says that 26% of our roads are obsolete, 66% of our roads are in bad condition. It gets worse, Raf. We're talking about roads and bridges that are about to potentially put
Kill
New
somebody.
Jersey.
Maybe that's what it'll take.
And the
Maybe that's what
Mayanas
it'll take
Bridge,
us.
that when it collapsed, no one thought it could happen. When it happened, people died. We should not even contemplate the possibility of that happening before public officials act. What do? The gas tax?
Yeah.
People say you don't need the money for the gas tax. Question is, money has to come from somewhere.
So let's talk about the gas tax.
Sure.
It's many people argue that it's the perfect tax because, in fact, it's a user fee. It's not only, it's the people paying it are the ones using the road.
Sure.
And not only that, but a lot of out-of-staters would be paying that as well.
People from Pennsylvania, New York, you drive
right.
through New Jersey, you pay.
That's right. But the problem with it, of course, is what? It's a political year. It's an election year.
Ralph, when is it not a political year?
That's true. We've been doing this for 20-some-odd years, and every year there's been some reason why the gas tax.
Mid-'80s, last time the gas tax was raised was in the mid-1980s. And the argument is it's never the right time. The question becomes, and look, 6 out of 10 New Jerseyans, the last poll that was taken, say they don't want a gas tax. But 6 out of 10 New Jerseyans do not say they don't want the roads and bridges repaired. They don't want safe roads and bridges. They say they want it. The question is, if there isn't any money to do it, and God forbid something happens, then most people will say, hey, wait a minute. Why did the public officials in the State House and the Golden Dome take care of us?
But Steve, there's also this, and this is an argument. This is a real argument. According to the Reason Foundation Highway Report, New Jersey ranks dead last on transportation spending. New Jersey pays $2 million per road mile. That's a lot of money.
How expensive it is?
Exactly. I mean, that has to be part of the equation. Why are we spending so much on fixing the roads, on transportation?
Ralph, you asked a complex question, and I don't know why it is, but I will say this. While that question is being answered, New Jersey is going to have to figure out how to pay this fund that takes care of the roads and bridges. We do have to answer that question. You're absolutely right. But for those who say the reason we can't fund it is because we can't figure out why it's so expensive.
So the money runs out in June of 2016?
Last day of June 2016. After that, there's no more money for roads and bridges. Got to deal with it. Got to be safe on the roads. For my colleague, Rafael Piumano, I'm Steve Adubato. Thank you so much for watching.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the CAUCUS Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by the New Jersey Education Association, the law firm of Gibbons, P.C., New Jersey Resources, NJM, NJ Best, International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825, the Northeast Regional Council of Carpenters, and by these public-spirited organizations, individuals, and associations committed to informing New Jersey citizens about the important issues facing the Garden State, and by Employers Association of New Jersey. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.
Your health is a precious resource, the foundation for everything you do. So at Barnabas Health, we do all we can to restore, protect, and improve it. Should you need care, we offer world-renowned specialists and amazing technology. Yet we also have hundreds of programs to help you avoid the need for that care in the first place. We're here for your health, so you can live, love, work, play, and dream. Barnabas Health. Life is better, healthy.